further afield, moving from Five Oak Green in Tunbridge if the merger comes, and yes, some foreign nationals. So it's quite complex. On a point of clarification on some other issues.
I just think what needs to be said before we read out, and the case officer will read out the ground that's been constructed, I think there's a point of clarification that needs to be said. In terms of page 98, MBC's landscape comments, that comment is not an objection. What that comment relates is that the applicant has underplayed the effects, and the earthworks and mitigation that has been introduced will alter the landscape in a contrived way. So what that isn't saying is it's an objection to the planning application. What the landscape officer has come up with is a view in terms of the LVIA that's submitted to support the ES, that some of the magnitude of effects have been underplayed. Now, this is a common occurrence that happens in LVIA assessments. They may be underplayed. What members, and I would ask members to draw their attention to, is the comments that the case officer, who has actually visited the site himself, who's walked the Greensand Way, and has set out clearly what his comments are in the report in terms of what his consideration in terms of the impact. I accept you're guided in terms of what the landscape officer comments are saying, but it is not an objection on landscape grounds from part of this. It's her comments in terms of underplaying of the LVIA that accompanied the application. And you have got quite a detailed assessment as set out in your report. I think that needed clarifying from the point, because I think there is an understanding or feeling that the landscape officer has outright objected in landscape terms.
Okay,
so in terms of, Chairman, so in terms of the ground that I think Councillor Prendergast has put forward, I'm going to ask the officer to read out what has been constructed, and then I would ask the Chairman if I could come back after that point to give an officer view.
Mr Wynne, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep, right. The grounds are the proposed development by virtue of the landscape harm arising from long-range views from the Greensand Way and short-term views from the public footpaths to the south is contrary to policies EMB 28 of the Maidstone Local Plan 2000 and policies of the Emerging Plans DM3, SP 17 and DM 34. Is considered the benefits proposed by the development would not outweigh this identified harm. The development, by reason of its location beyond a economic development area, would also be contrary to the approach set out in policy DM21.
Right. Yes, I was having the same problem as well. Yes, I think you should. I'm sorry. I couldn't hear it either. Thank you.
Okay. The proposed development by virtue of the landscape harm arising from long-range views from the Greensand Way and short-term views from the public footpath to the south is contrary to policies ENV 28 of the Maidstone Local Plan 2000 and policies DM3, SP 17, DM 34 of the Emerging Local Plan. It is considered the benefits proposed by the development would not outweigh this identified harm. The development, by reason of its location beyond an economic development area, would also be contrary to the approach set out in policy DM21.
Thank you very much. Mr Jarman or Mr Bailey, you did have a comment on that.
Yeah, I think in terms of, as part of the constitution requirements, I am advised that I must give advice on whether that ground is a sustainable ground on the appeal. Is a sustainable ground to refuse the application. My view on that is that it's not sustainable, and the reasons for that view is because too much weight has been placed on the landscape impact and not enough weight has been placed on the other benefits arising from the scheme. So in terms of any potential appeal and defending that issue, I would then, in terms of invoke, if the application were to be refused, I would then consider there to be potential significant cost warnings against that issue. So if members, just to be clear, so if members were to go and refuse the application, my advice is that ground is not sustainable for the reasons that I've just set out, that too much weight has been given to the landscape harm and not enough weight has been given to the other benefits arising from the proposals. And in terms of those, setting those out, the transport benefits, the economic benefits, and the ecological benefits arising from the proposals. And so on that basis, I would invoke the calling off period.
Or alternatively, members need to outline why that weight doesn't apply in the recommendation. In other words, you would need to one moment, Mr. Jarman.
I concur with what Mr. Bailey said. It's one of balance, and my concern is that an inspector will put great weight on securing existing jobs, extra jobs, clear improvements to Linton Crossroads. This scheme more than washes its face, as it were, in terms of improving Linton Crossroads. But I'm not going to talk again about the ecological benefits and the landscape benefits.
So in other words, if members were minded to progress with the ground for refusal here, they would need to explain why the weighting is as it is.
As a point of order, Chairman, would that come after the vote? I just a question.
I would say at this point, I'm not going to entertain any further debate on this. At this point, we have the appropriate point at this time is to return to this issue if the amendment passes. I am not going to speculate any further on hypotheticals. Right, those members in favour of refusing the application at this point on the grounds set out. Those against. So that makes that probably hypothetical at this point. Any abstentions? No. Right, that has fallen. We now proceed back to the debate. As a refusal has not been passed as an amendment, we now move back to the discussion, and therefore something else needs to be proposed. I would like to propose the recommendation.
It's already been proposed.
Okay. My apologies. I do apologise. It's hot and I've lost the plot. I was merely going to suggest that we move to the vote, and that Councillor Harwood has already proposed the motion, and Councillor Mumford's has also done so. So those in favour of the recommendation as amended with the addition of Councillor Harwood incorporating the points about the encouragement of the Euro standard in the travel plan.
And delegation to insert reasons for the conditions to conditions 4, 5, 7, 11, 7.
Yes, and delegations to insert the reasons for conditions 4, 5, 7, 11 and 17.
And the deletion.
And
the deletion of conditions 14 and 22 as they'll be dealt with by the length in section 1.
yeah. And finally, deletion of conditions 14 and 22 as they're dealt with by the LEMP. And Councillor Harwood, you were indicating again. It is in the heads of terms. I think it was right to flag it up, Councillor Harwood, because certain commitments have been made to the parish councils and local residents, and clearly it is important that those are actually delivered. Sorry? But, yes, the point is that we actually need to fill that out by actually appointing the relevant people. which I think you were going on to say, Councillor Harwood. So obviously, yes, I know that it's there, Ms Bailey, and thank you for drawing my attention to it, but we do actually need to ensure that that is what we will be correct, because it's important. What we have suggestion is ward councillors, parish council representatives, of which there are a number of parish councils which are involved with this, the developer obviously, and the local planning authority. Is there anyone else that the committee feels is appropriate? Occasionally we have added additional members who are not ward members to So that's the chairman, vice chairman, and the two other group spokespersons. Councillor Mumford.
I just want, I'm concerned about highways. I want included in the highways management plan that the surrounding country lanes are signed unsuitable for HGV. I want it included in either the highway management plan or on our recommendations here.
I think that's very sensible. We do need to ensure what's been promised is to it is chairman, vice chair. We've moved on from that. Yeah, group spokespersons. Yeah, I know it's a lot of people, but this is very important. Okay, thank you. Sorry, a little muttering going on there. Right. Anything else? Because this is very important and obviously does impact on a lot of people. So if we've left anything out, please say so now. Okay, no. Ms. Councillor Cole.
Sorry. You've got the lane to the west, but you've also got Buck Green Lane and you've also got Starbridge Lane on the east. And I think that would create a cut through to the Heathrow to avoid the Linton Cross Road. I just wonder whether we should prescriptively mention those lanes.
Very quickly.
Could you delegate that to us in consultation with KCC, and then we will discuss that, the signs to put on the most appropriate roads. I don't want to do it here so we don't capture or miss a road out. So
we don't want to miss anyone because we're trying to do it too quickly. Right. I think that covers everything. All those in favour of the amended, very much amended recommendation to approve. 8, 9. Those against? That's everyone, so there's no abstentions. Application approved. Before anyone goes, I was a little ratty with Councillor Stockwell earlier. That was inappropriate, and I withdraw a remark. Councillor Stockwell, I've only been ratty with you twice in a very long time, but that is 2 times too long, I admit. Right, I'll give members of the public a minute or so to leave if they wish before we move on to the next application. But Right, members, I'm sorry for this long, hot evening, and I do apologise to Mr. Tricker. Hopefully we will get to. What I would like to do before we do anything else, we've got 2 items down here in sunny Marden which don't have any speakers on. Is anyone likely to want item 18, page 123, Stanley Farm, introduced and debated? Now, in that case, members, may I move forward and move the recommendation? I'll just check whether there's an urgent update. I believe there is an urgent update on this. I believe there is. Okay, so move the recommendation on the papers with the urgent... No, not bothering with that on this one because there wasn't any. So, all those in favour?
Seconded, Chair.
Councillor Harwood. Right, that's everyone. Thank you. Right. And moving on and staying in the sunny parish of Marden, item 16, page 85. Anyone likely to want to speak to this? Oh, right. In that case, move the recommendation. Sorry?
Yeah. That's it. There's 1 year.
One what?
There's one urgent update.
Yes, I know. There is an urgent update with this, so I move then the recommendation with the urgent update. Seconded, Councillor Harwood. All those in favour? Thank you. I'm going to try this. Our members, we have an officer here from Maidstone Borough Council on terms of Moat Park. Councillor Harwood, can I just... You made representations. Have your questions been answered? Okay, so you're not likely to speak to it. In that case, as it's an NBC application, it does have to be introduced, so please do it fairly quickly. Okay. Page 68 of the report. While we're doing that, can I take any declarations of lobbying on this application, on the Moat Park one? Anyone not lobbying? Yeah. That's Councillors Vizard, Councillor Spooner, Councillor Butler, Councillor Stockwell, Councillor Prendergast and Councillor Cox. So that means everyone else was. Right. Now, as I direct members' attention to the urgent update which I just mentioned, has everyone had the chance to read it? Very quickly.
Thank you, Chair. I know you've already referred to the urgent update report, but it does raise particular issues regard to car parking A, which I know have been particular concerns, and quite a lot of work has gone into those issues on car parking A in terms of preventative measures for parking under the trees. Members will know it is an existing overflow car parking area, heavily used in the summer, and what these proposals seek to do is consolidate that car park. It's already used. It's got pay and display machines within it. So these proposals are considered to be an improvement to an existing situation and to protect some of the trees in terms of the route protection areas by restricting car access under those tree areas. There's quite a lot of elements to this application, but obviously I haven't got a lot of time to go through those issues. Principally it's the creation of an adventure zone which includes high rope wire climbing equipment, the climbing wall, adventure golf, improvements to the parking areas, creation of a new parking area, and with the adventure zone to be enclosed by a 2.4 metre high fencing, and it includes associated facilities within the adventure zone, within this fencing area, which includes a kiosk, which is effectively 3 storage containers which are clad and then have a green roof applied onto the top of them. So it's trying to sort of keep within the ethos of the parkland setting. You're all aware that it is a Grade 2 Parks and Garden. I'm just going to go through very quickly in terms of the proposals. Most members will know it very well. This is looking towards the skate park. This is looking towards the area in terms of where the adventure zone is going to be located in this area here, so it will require the relocation of the existing skateboard park. And then if we move slightly closer overview, again, you've got the proposed development over in this area here. Again, this is the sort of the existing overflow parking area, so that would extend off to the right-hand side. Parking area B. Again, slightly closer view of it. Again, that's looking towards the proposed location. Again, this is northwards towards the main carping area, and it's the location of car parking B. Again, slightly closer view. That's the existing area where you come in around here. So that's a slightly closer view. View looking towards the existing play area, and obviously with the new adventure zone located just beyond that, and obviously you know that there's the leisure complex just over onto the right-hand side. Again, slightly closer view, you can see the leisure centre just here. Again, this is the car parking area here. A lot of these photographs just go around the site, so I'm going to whiz around them very quickly. The reasons why I said it's considered to consolidate, because it's already used very heavily in the summer months. You've got parking machines here, and you can just see over in this area. There's quite a lot of bare gravel in this particular area, and the proposals do seek to consolidate that. You can see this area here, and then moving off to the area. So what effectively this area would be prevented from cars going and parking on this particular area, and they would be prevented by low-level fencing. So there would be improvements in terms of the route protection areas and to the aesthetics of certain areas of the park. Again, this is the overflow parking area. This is within the site now. We were just over there. So that's the road that continues down there. And again, we just move around the overflow parking area. You've got the main parking area here. Existing pathways. This was included from the applicant submission, which shows the existing sort of situation that occurs in the overflow car parking area. And what would happen is the new plans would prevent parking in this area and take cars away from the RPAs. So there is quite a significant improvement that's going to occur on that particular site in terms of the arboricultural impacts on trees, which soils are being compressed in that area currently. Again, this just shows an example of how it's currently used. So effectively, this would be more formalised. There'll be sort of the green areas. This will be consolidated, the main pathway areas. And then I'll move very quickly. This is the issue of the the kiosk areas with the green roof. And then this is the high wire areas. And effectively, so this effectively shows this is where the high wire areas are area here, the extended car parking area here, and the consolidation of the existing issue. So I'm going to finish up in terms of how this fulfills with the Council's strategic objectives. It aligns with those strategic objectives relating to leisure, improved leisure facilities. In terms of the impact on the historic parkland, it is considered acceptable. All other matters, again, have been considered and are considered acceptable, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you going to have to leave us because of the Headcorn situation, Marty? Yeah, I understand. Right, I will rapidly move to the vote on this. Yeah, there's a fire in Headcorn. Apologies from 2 members for Headcorn. There is a fire taking place in Headcorn High Street, and they feel they need to go back to Headcorn for obvious reasons. But no, that's for Steve. But why? Why don't you want to? All right, we're going to vote on this now. Members, all of those unless anyone has anything to say on the application, I'm going to move the recommendation. It's not in my ward, but it's very close to it, as on the papers. Seconded, Councillor Cox. All those in favour? Thank you. Go home happy, Lawrence. Sorry to have kept you so long. Are you leaving? Yeah. Right. Right. As two members are going to have to, would you like the application to be? Okay, fine. We shouldn't take long. We are now moving to the application on Staplehurst Cricket and Tennis Club. Hopefully, well, it can't go on beyond 55 minutes. So.
Just a brief clarification. The skate park that's being moved, will it be considered for an actual move rather than a demolish and recasting? Because there's quite a lot of concrete in that structure. I just wondered if that could be considered as part of that last one.
I think we've moved on, but if you'd like to bring that up to, take it up with the officer directly. Yeah. It'd make a very nice feature for your business. Right, we are now moving on. Are you sure you're okay? Right, we're moving on with the Staplehurst application in. Sorry? Councillor Mumford has gone to, I think, to attend the delivery of a new... His daughter is literally about to deliver, I think, so he had to leave. Right, so we're moving on rapidly, members.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for erection of a pair of three-bedroom semi-detached dwellings. It's the Cricket and Tennis Club, Frittenden Road in Staplehurst. This is the application site. Just to put some context around it, the application boundary, i.e. the settlement boundary, carries on down this road and wraps around this area here and then comes up along here. So this area up here is part of the core historic area. It's part of the conservation area. So obviously the proposal has an impact on the setting of the conservation area, and as defined by policy, this is located in the countryside. You've got a non-designated heritage asset, which is Cricket Lodge here, which is one of the key focal buildings that you see when you're coming south, and you'll see that in the photographs moving forward. And obviously, you've got the High Street running down here, which runs into the Cranbrook Road as you go further south, with the petrol station just here, or the forecourt area. In terms of the site, so this is the application site in here, with the Tennis and Cricket Club behind. This is the building I referred to, which is Cricket Lodge, which, as I said, designates as a non-designated heritage asset. And off to the left, you have a designated heritage asset, which is the conservation area. And that's the edge of the settlement boundary as well. It follows contiguous with the conservation area boundary. So this is the area that you're looking at. This just looks up a closer view of the Cricket Lodge, and then you've got the access way that leads up here, the private way that, and the public right-of-way actually that leads up here to the main house that's accessed at the top, and you've got Frittenden Road off to the left-hand side. This is slightly southeast, with the application site on the left-hand side, with quite a number of trees located on it. This is looking back down that access road with the application site on the right-hand side, and as I said, this is the Cricket Lodge property. Again, this is a view looking west along Frittenden Road towards Cranbrook Road, with the site on the left-hand side over here. So this is the key area of the trees. And of that, there's, I think the report says there's 10 trees within, or 11 trees within the site. Of that, 7 trees would be removed, and a sort of a number, there's an ash group within there, and they would also be removed. This is internal view of the site looking south. This is looking from that access road again, back towards that existing, towards the existing trees. Turning to the plan form, in terms of, sorry, I'm just correcting myself, and the proposals would remove 7 trees and part of the group of ash trees, just for clarification on those photographs I've showed you. So in terms of the block plan showing the site, you've got a new access way created, Frittenden Road, with an access point of here off that access way. You've got the houses here, so you've got the front of the houses here and the back of the houses. So the back of the houses directly access onto the access road. In terms of elevations, you've got the front elevation here. So in effect, you will see that that's the front elevation there, looking towards those trees, and the rear elevation right here, and that is the rear elevation there. In terms of front elevation and the rear elevation here. You've got the ground floor, so the accessway would be running along there, and you've got first floor accommodation there. So the key issues to consider are set out in the report in paragraph 6.1, and I won't go through those in detail now. The application site is by definition within the countryside to which policy ENV 28 of the adopted local plan applies, and SB 17 of the emerging local plan applies. The site adjoins the Staplehurst Conservation Area and is adjacent to the non-designated heritage asset, as I said. It is also covered by policy PW2 of the Staplehurst Neighbourhood Plan, which seeks to, in effect, the last elements of it. If members wish me to read out the policy, I can, but it seeks to protect proposals which effectively fail to demonstrate the impacts can be satisfactorily addressed, and it concludes that they will not be supported under that policy. As I said, I can go into further detail if you wish. The report concludes that by virtue of the loss of existing tree cover and hedges within the site, the built form on the site, the poor layout, the negative impact on the setting of the adjacent conservation area, and the location of the site within the countryside, that the proposals would be harmful to the established character and have a negative impact on the setting of the conservation area, which would be contrary to the NPPF, established local plan and emerging policies, and, as I said, policy PW2 of the Staplehurst Neighbourhood Plan. And as such, this application is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Mr. Sonex for the applicant, please. Press the grey button in the middle. You have 3 minutes.
Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. As the committee will have noted, this application was validated on the 6th of July 2016, exactly a year ago today, with the decision date of the 31st of August 2016. It's been handled by 4 different planning officers, resulting in what officers have acknowledged as an unreasonable delay. The applicants have readily provided an arboricultural report, ecology survey, financial viability and heritage statement, even though the application site is outside the conservation area. At no time over the past year have the 4 planning officers raised any concerns over the design until this report, prepared by an independent planning contractor, brought in recent weeks. Emerging policies DM1 and DM3 state that applicants should enhance the local, natural and historic character of the area with use of vernacular materials where appropriate. This design has been specifically created in the typical historic cottage style which has evolved in Staplehurst over the ages. Vernacular bay windows, red tile hung gables under a traditional plain tiled roof, with barn hips to reduce bulking and create rural character, thus respecting the adjacent conservation area, which actually comprises relatively modern houses immediately on the north side of the Frittenden Road. Policy requires respect for amenities of neighbouring properties. The planning officer states under point 615, in summary, with the separation distance from other residential properties, the proposed development is acceptable in relation to residential amenity. The planning officer states the front of the house should face the main road, when the proposed dwellings are actually significantly set back from the main road behind trees, and more importantly, on the east side of the A229 dwellings are low density and typically do not face the road and would therefore be incongruous if they did. The officer's report fails to note that the applicants will remove 2 substantial structures, a large derelict pavilion with tiled roof and a large corrugated asbestos storage shed, thus mitigating built form and bulking in the immediate area. In conclusion, the report is incorrect regarding the loss of trees and boundary hedging. As it's clear, it will be fully hedged in native species, giving 75% increase on existing and the group of ash trees, which could be removed at any time anyway, between the proposed dwelling and the main road will be retained. The planning officer is incorrect in orientation and has failed to identify the design has been specifically created to match the existing historic vernacular of Staplehurst, with bay windows and tile-hung gables, and as such, on these two main points, his grounds for refusal are incorrect and unsupported by fact. The application has been supported by the KCC Public Rights of Way Officer, the KCC Highways Department, Staplehurst Parish Council, confirming the application and its purpose are consistent with the neighbourhood plan. The arboriculturist confirms no significant trees. The ecologist found no significant or protected species, and the planning officer states that the development will have no impact on neighbours' residential amenity. The applicants respectfully ask that the committee approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Perry.
It's getting rather late. Thank you, Chairman, members. When I read this report, I have to say it really took me by surprise. Maidstone's Parks and Open Spaces 10-year strategic plan emphasises healthier living, play and recreation as key elements in the strategy. And as this plan highlights, being physically active is strongly linked to better health and well-being, with lack of exercise shown to increase at least 20 chronic health conditions. Unfortunately, if the recommendation to refuse is accepted, the long-term financial viability of this very important community facility would be put at serious risk. This club has played and continues to play a major role in our community, and in fact is the largest community and youth organisation in Staplehurst, as well as having an extensive outreach programme with local schools. Nevertheless, further investment is needed to ensure facilities are updated, and approval of this application is needed to enable this to happen. We need to gain access to funds from the sale of the land to leverage external funding agreed in principle from sports governing bodies. I would have thought that the report would have recognised this, but does not seem to do so. Instead, in paragraph 8, it seems to highlight every planning policy available to argue for refusal. In fact, there are so many, I'm surprised the report hasn't referred to Magna Carta. Yet it appears to ignore one very important policy, namely policy SP5, which refers directly to resisting the loss of community facilities to meet local needs. This is an important community facility that Staplehurst desperately needs. But if this application were to be refused, the future viability of this community facility would be put in danger. Please do not support yet another blow to a rural community. I will not comment on the design, because I think this is very subjective. However, I do not accept that this development would have any adverse effect on heritage assets and their settings, nor do I think it contravenes policy PW2 of the Staplehurst Neighbourhood Plan. The potential impact on the visual setting and landscape would be very low. We're talking about 2 semi-detached houses, not a fully fledged housing estate. It seems perfectly acceptable to allow cumulative development just down the road in Maplehurst, in the middle of the open countryside, but not here where there's genuine need. In fact, I've come to understand that ENV 28 SP17 are used a bit like a conjurer's white rabbit. Now you see them, now you don't. There's a lack of consistency in this, which gives me really concern. And I'm really touched by the concern applied to the conservation area.
I'm sorry, Councillor
Perry.
Perry.
To be applied to the hideous fencing conservation area.
Nevertheless, the rules are the rules.
Maybe there are.
No,
Please
you're not,
do not
Councillor
refuse
Perry.
this app.
I'm sorry, Councillor Perry, you're not carrying on. I'm sorry. 3 minutes are 3 minutes. Councillor Bright. Could you put the block plan up?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Chair and members. It's been a long, hot evening. I'm going to ask the committee to reject the officer's recommendation respectfully and vote to approve the application. And I'd like you to have a little look at the block plan, actually. The views and the photographs you've had have given you a very specific snapshot of this corner of Staplehurst. But I'd just like to remind you, and maybe if you've got Google in front of you, do open up Google Maps. You're on a busy A229 here, and just literally round the corner is a huge Esso petrol station and a council estate opposite. So this is what we think of building adjacent to a conservation area in Staplehurst. We can have a council estate, we can have a great big petrol station, but we can't have two well-designed semi-detached houses. The design of the houses is very similar to an identical design that was passed several years ago, which is on Bell Lane, which was based on historic cottages that are also down that lane. So it is sympathetic with Staplehurst. There wasn't actually an appeal decision for planning at the Esso garage for 8 dwellings, and the inspector did say that this is not judged to be in a countryside location, and I can give you the PIN reference number if you would like to refer to that too. I would like to talk to the point that Councillor Perry started about community. You've listened to me many times at Council talk about how Staplehurst is really at a tipping point. If we don't get this application approved, we will have gone over that tipping point. We have 450 members here. We have 120 youngsters. That's a huge engagement that these volunteers have done to get these kids to come down week in, week out. Believe me, I grew up in a village. There is very little to do if you're young, if you're under 17, that doesn't require your mum and dad getting you in a car. If you take away this cricket club, if this investment doesn't come, the state of the facilities is dire. There is no future for it, and it won't be 2 houses you'll be looking at an application for. It'll be 300. It'll be Marden Cricket Club. Okay, so we really, really need your support here. Councillor Perry has referred to SP5. I'll refer to 5.46, which talks about improved infrastructure that will maintain and improve local facilities and services. You could give us a lifeline. I've come to committee and council and asked for investment in Staplehurst. I know we don't have limitless budgets, but tonight, if you approve this application, you will give our community a lifeline. There's only 2 places kids in Staplehurst can go. One's to the football club, one's to the cricket club. Please don't take that opportunity away from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bryce. There isn't an urgent update on this one, as far as I can tell. Now, take declarations of lobbying. I've been lobbied. Has everyone been lobbied? I think everyone has. Yes, good. Right. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you. The 2 ward members spoke extremely well and have actually taken the words out of my mouth to a certain extent. I'm curious. Why so long? Why 4 officers? Why an outside consultant? But we can answer that in a minute. I am also really concerned about the lack of consistency. The very policies that we're citing here, we've just disregarded with previous applications this evening. Just a few months ago, we had some hideous fencing within the conservation area in Staplehurst, yet we were quite happy. The recommendation was to go with it. And thank goodness this committee had the foresight to say no. And here it's being used in absolutely the opposite way. It's just staggering. So I'm going to move straight away because I think it's a ridiculous situation we find ourselves in. You know, we're forever building homes in the open countryside. Here are 2 well thought of houses, clear community benefits. So I'm just going to say yes Okay, it might be outside of our development plan, but SP5, the loss of community facility, and whatever our policy on outdoor spaces, the benefit of those outweighs the harm caused. So if I could have a seconder, I'd be extremely grateful. Thank you.
The risk of interfering, I think you need to slightly finesse that. I think what you're trying to say is that notwithstanding the countryside policy, the actual harm that is involved is outweighed by the benefit to the community of the enabling development. There are questions about whether it constitutes enabling development.
It's not been put forward, so I'll have to answer that.
But that is essentially what you're saying. So we need to explore where that goes. I take it you are seconding that, or speaking on it. Okay, fine. I'm just checking. But before we go any further with that, Mr. Bailey, I think you might have a comment on the viability, shall we say, of that.
As far as the enabling development, I haven't seen anything in the documentation that refers to an enabling development. So in terms of that issue, the report doesn't mention issues in terms of viability. Lots of issues have been said about, effectively, that the club would close down. I haven't seen anything in the documentation that refers to the fact that if this application would be refused, that it has a consequential serious impact on the viability of the club operating. And I think the previous councillors raised the issue on the fact that they need this for match funding. Now, I think that's laudable, but that doesn't mean that the community facility is closing down. There's a big difference between what's been sought to achieve, and what members need to consider on this issue is, again, it's those balancing exercises. I've tried to draw the issues in terms of, and one of the issues you have to consider in a site like this is you've got the conservation area, setting of the conservation area. What does this site contribute now? What would it contribute after with the housing in place and with the paths and the access roads and everything else that goes in there? Then you've got to consider what the impact on that setting of the conservation is. And also you add on to that the countryside location and you balance those issues. Now, the report is quite clear that the impact on the setting of the conservation area is negative, so that weighs against the proposal. It results in a loss of trees which contribute quite significantly to that character. That is a negative. It is outside the settlement boundary. That is a negative. And then you look at, does it harm the character of that area? Well, you have to take into consideration how it currently contributes. So I accept in terms of the community facility could be weighed in a benefit. I accept that proposal, but I think it needs to be clear this application isn't saying those community facilities will close down if this application is refused. It's a big difference.
Right, I think there is clearly a difference of interpretation there. Given the importance of that particular issue, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask this, did the planning officers join any of the discussions, seek any viability evidence or request any viability evidence from the applicant?
I have got the planning file with me, and there's no evidence of a viability appraisal.
No, that's not what I asked. Did our officers request it?
My understanding is no.
Okay, fine. So
no, I can only answer on that basis.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, okay, I can't. Sorry, Mr. Sonics, we shouldn't get into a debate because shame. Right, no, one moment.
If there is an issue that I have misrepresented information here on the viability appraisal, I think the only right thing to do is to defer the application, because I haven't got that in front of me. It's my recommendation. I haven't got in front of me, and I think if that is an important consideration that members want further information, I think it's only fair and right that I bring the report back to members, and I'll bring back that viability information, and that will be set out in a report. And I think that is only fair if, because I haven't got the information here. It is not mentioned in the report to members, and I think it would only be fair that I bring that back with that information.
Well, I think it is quite key, Mr Bailey. One moment, we shouldn't overrun by much, but will members agree to going beyond 10:30? Thank you. In a moment. Right. There are issues that have also been raised by the officer's report. Before we go any further, and I do apologise, Councillor Clark, for delaying you, but I do want to know whether or not the issues of layout, tree loss, design, or any of the other issues are susceptible for being dealt with during a deferral, because, you know, if any of these issues can be dealt with at the same time, you know, that might have a bearing. So can I ask that while we're talking about deferral to get a viability report?
Well, my understanding is they're saying the viability report's been submitted. It's not referred to in the application, and if I've misinformed members, that's why I've requested it coming back. With regard to the trees, Chairman, the proposal has been designed with an arboricultural assessment that has accompanied the application, and those trees are required to be removed to accommodate this scheme. So the issues on arboricultural impact will not change. The only thing that will change will be that balancing exercise, as I said, how much weight members would wish to apportion to the viability appraisal and the issues and the financial constraints of the club and the needs arising from this scheme balanced against those negative benefits that I've already apportioned you to in terms of the officer's view.
I'm sorry to belabor this point, but I do feel I have to ask if we're going to have a deferral anyway or not, whether any of the design issues that have been raised can be addressed in that period, or whether you feel that they are so significant that it will require a new application. I think we need to know the answer to that question.
Sorry, Chairman. I think the key issue that's raised in the ground refusal is generally the poor layout, the orientation in terms of the poor design. I mean, that poor design comes from the overall poor layout that's coming forward. In terms of the access arrangements, you've got the front of the dwelling over in this location, you've got the back of the dwelling, so your access areas are here. Effectively, no. I think you're being asked to consider an application now, and the reason for it is the area of hard standing here, the way that effectively you view the back of the dwelling in terms of this location. It's right on in terms of the area from the access road. So I think those issues need to be considered now, and that's set out in the report. As I said, the previous issue is that viability stuff.
Okay, I'm not minded I take your point that there is no point for deferring any other issues, but I do feel personally that the viability issue and whether or not this does constitute enabling development is very significant, and we should know, because frankly it is an issue that needs to be considered, and especially if there's an issue of whether or not something has been submitted and we haven't had it at a committee. Councillor Clark.
Okay. I have a question to the officer about SB5, because the context of SB5 was around this viability and the fact that this will help the group carry forward. My understanding of SB5 is that you should sort of protect areas that are used as amenities. So in other words, we're actually taking away some of this space. So I'd like you to clarify that. I understand if we were to take this site away for housing development, SB5 would come into it, but I'm just trying to work out how SB5 comes into this application as it stands. The other point I would like to raise is, if we do find that there was a missing viability statement, can you come back to this committee and explain what actually happened to get to that point? Because obviously the applicant has had a chance to come back and address the committee. Most applicants don't, and I just want to make sure that that isn't something that could happen in other instances.
I will come back to members and explain why that viability appraisal was missed. As I said, the applicant is right. It went through a number of officers coming forward. Unfortunately, a number of our consultants left. As I said, the viability appraisal information is not on the file. It is not addressed in the content of the committee report. I still don't necessarily, I go back to it doesn't address the harm issues that are arising. What it does potentially do is give members an opportunity to consider that balancing to say, well, would this override all those other matters that the officers have raised in the report? I don't think it's going to address the design and the layout principal issues, because that's not what we're seeking to defer it. It's just those benefits. And to answer Councillor Clark's issue in terms of SB5, yes, I mean, that obviously, you know, it's outside the settlement. It's part of that community provision and that green space provision. But as the Chair's already raised, if members considered that the benefits of permitting that housing in that location to provide funds to enhance the facilities on the existing community facility, then potentially that would override that policy issue. So it's key to the balancing, and I apologise to members that that's not before them tonight. I'm going to suggest to members that we have a vote on deferral for that, because I do feel it, personally, I feel it would be unfair to make a decision without that information, but members may take a different view. I'm putting that to the vote, because I think if I have a second. Of course you can ask Claire. Well, we don't, Councillor Harwood, it's up to the committee to decide whether or not something trumps something else, as we had a discussion earlier. But it is not, in my view, and the committee can vote me down if you like, but in my view, we do not have the complete information, and it does not seem fair, or right, or proper to make a decision without all of the information. And frankly, so I am proposing deferral to get that viability information if anyone is prepared to second it. If not, fine.
Chairman, if I may, my point that I wanted to make actually speaks specifically to the principle of deferment, so it wouldn't make any sense to have the point after the vote. Would you mind if I speak to it quickly? Thank you. I do wonder, and I'm not sure if this is really sort of bending the rule book right out of whack, but we're 25 minutes away from actually having to end this meeting. If a viability report already exists, perhaps we might not reach a decision tonight and it be submitted as an urgent update for us. I'm thinking actually of the length of time that this planning application has been going on for already. So we are already due to have an adjourned meeting. We will be here again next week. If we simply didn't reach a decision tonight, we could have that next week as an urgent update, no need for a vote for deferral, and actually this time next week we could have a decision with all the evidence in front of us.
I'm not entirely sure we can do that.
That's why I asked.
I did ask for, on the other issues. Members, I really am going to call us. I really would like a vote on whether you think it's right or wrong to defer for the viability assessment, because the argument was it's enabling development, and if it is enabling development, we need to know whether it is or not. We can't make a decision on an assertion in either direction. And if we try to approve the application tonight, we don't have the evidence. If we try and refuse it tonight, we may be being terribly unfair.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, it could constitute a material planning consideration, and on that basis, you need to be aware of those facts. They're not before you now, and then you need to be made aware of them and then make a decision how valid they are to the planning decision. So my advice would be, because the applicant could decide to challenge a decision, if so wished, because members hadn't been brought that material consideration to their attention. So my advice is to defer the application, and I will bring it to the next planning committee. So it's deferred to the next planning committee, which is the 27th of July, and then you would have a report updating you on that consideration. So that's my recommendation for now.
Councillor Powell, very quickly.
Yeah, I'd like to sort of refute that. We shouldn't be referring to this. This is incompetence. I mean, there's an officer that's received something. He hasn't, or she hasn't, divulged any of that information at all. I've heard an applicant talk tonight. I've had 2 parish councillors talk, and and plus the numerous emails that most of us have got, and it's completely different to what we've got in this report. Now, I'm not expecting it to be exactly the same, because obviously there's a rejection, which is a recommendation, and obviously the other people want to accept it. But just going back to what Councillor Harwood was saying, I mean, there's certain things which we have to look at, which is the planning application. There's 2 properties here, which, to be quite honest, they're pretty good compared with some of the properties that have recently had applications accepted in Staplehurst. In fact, not only are they actually adding to that place, but they're actually giving funding to a facility that is supporting 450 people. And to be quite honest, I'm all for supporting sports facilities, especially in a rural area like Staplehurst. So, in terms of referral, I don't think this referral is so much should we or shouldn't we. I think that we shouldn't, but also the person that has actually put this report together tonight ought to have a serious slap tomorrow morning.
I don't think we should conduct personnel issues in public committee. You've heard Mr Bailey's advice, so I'm going to ask members to confirm their point to that. Thank you. Councillor Prendergast, it is an amendment.
Chairman,
yes.
I was only going to ask, if we put aside the fact that it's an application that's enabling something else, if we put that aside, can we not just look at it as an application on its own merits, whether we would be prepared as a committee to go outside of our development plan and consider it on its own merits?
Well,
so make a decision.
I don't think we could do anything other than refuse it if we did that. And
I'm asking. That's
because essentially, I'm sorry, I'm straining to giving an opinion here, but I think there may be an argument for doing this, but I haven't got it. And I really do feel that whichever way it comes down, we need that piece of evidence. It's not fair to either side. The officer's given his advice. My amendment's been seconded. I am going to move to the vote. Those in favour of deferral for the viability assessment to be tabled. Those against? 2. I don't think there are any abstentions. Thank you very much. To the next meeting. Because clearly, yes, I'm going to the substantive. That's now the substantive. Those in favour? Of the deferral, yeah. Those against? 1. No abstentions. Right. One trusts you have a copy and you can supply that fairly quickly. Members, thank you for your patience on a very difficult and hot, and officers too. No, we're not doing that.